prescriptions in the Indian knowledge systems, the focus is always on the greater common good, and Sarvodaya, Abhyudaya, Sarva Bhuta Hita. Those are the concepts that have been the foundation of what an individual person's dharma should be. That understanding that he is part of a much larger ecosystem, and therefore his dharma is in service of that larger ecosystem, which brings us back to the idea of environmental stewardship. And choosing our actions, choosing our karmas, which are not based in fear and not based in worry that, what's going to happen to the next generations, the waters are polluted, the skies are polluted, the food is not organic anymore. There's this tremendous fear that is building up, and which the next generations are also inheriting from us because they see that we have created a mess. But the right action comes not from those feelings of fear and guilt, but from a sense of connectedness, a sense of love, and a sense of reverence for nature. And so then your action is really an inspired action. It's a positive action, and it will have long-term kind of positive results. And here, very briefly, also want to bringing up the idea of yajna, which is an offering. So your life becomes an offering. The life is not just about what's going to happen to me or what's going to happen to my kids, but it's really what is my role in this larger system, and therefore what should I really be doing? And fortunately, we still have, the most beautiful and incredible thing about India today is that we have not completely lost access to what our ancients were talking about. And we have these practices that we can do on a daily basis. And these rituals, and they could be very simple, small rituals like, getting up in the morning and offering a pranam to the sun. These rituals are actually ways in which that really large impersonal idea of nature becomes a personal friend, personalizing nature so that I know that on a daily basis that I am sustained by her. And these rituals, when they are done consciously and with knowledge, they are really powerful tools to help you to realign yourself with nature. However, on the other hand, when rituals just become mechanistic and people become rigid about those rituals, they create havoc in another way, which is what we are going to talk about. So I just like to stop for a minute here before I go into the second half of the presentation, which is about the campaign. And if there are any thoughts or ideas or questions, we can maybe briefly take them here.
May I, Manisha ji?
Yeah.
I was really intrigued by this idea, and I remember discussing it with some of the friends of mine who are working in environment that save Earth is a very egoistic statement, because Earth can save itself. We as people, as humanity, have to save ourselves, and we have to work on our being. Saving Earth, Earth has been here, and Earth is going to be here for a long time. It's we who are in a momentarily existence on the planet. Also, I would really like to understand that I know it might be your concern or it might not be, but we as people who are working in areas that always talk about paisa kamao or naukri karo or fir varna people will just start judging you. All these things that you're discussing is a thing of, it's like taking sannyas, or you're going away from the whole system. How does it work? How can it be a everyday thing? Is it possible even? I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I have not taken sannyas yet. I'm very active. And so what I wanted to say that although, I've had this foundation of sadhana, I'm also very much a karma yogi. So I can't sit still and I have to get up and do something about things, right? So we will now in the next half, I'll show you how I found, avenues through which I could practice this, right? And perhaps each one of us is going to have to look for What is your particular dharma, and what is it, the thing that inspires you? Because I also came to realize that, if we don't consider nature as black and white, right? So it doesn't become us and them, that, oh, all of us who are trying to protect the environment and all of those people who are trying to who are polluting the environment. You don't separate the world out into these very kind of rigid dualities, but you say, okay, all of this exists. I'm being inspired to do something, somebody else is being inspired to do the absolute opposite. But if I am nature, then that person is also nature, you know. So you start kind of having space in your mind for everything to coexist, and our the group I run is called Ecoexist. But you really start saying, okay, if this is part of reality right now, that there are certain people inspired in a certain way and certain others who are doing the absolute opposite, but my perspective of nature is that all of it is nature, then what would my approach be? So your entire environmental paradigm will start shifting. So I think let me just now
M-
go over the next.
Manisha ji, I also have a small question on this.
Sure.
It was a wonderful talk and
Hmm.
I really loved it. And best part that I have learned is that like we used to criticize before, ये गंदा कर रहे हैं, ये ऐसा कर रहे हैं. So we can all coexist in nature, adjusting with each other, accommodating each other, and we keep on doing something like this offering water to sun god and offering water to Tulsi. But we can be more conscious, like we are conscious and thank them for the energy and other things they are doing.
Yes.
That's really very, very good. And I really enjoyed your talk and learned a lot. My small question is like you said, we need to be aligned, in our thoughts, in our karmas and everything. But when it comes to practice, actually, like you go out, you work, sometimes that alignment somehow, you're not able to maintain that. Where you have to maintain that true nature of yourself. Your true soul nature is actually with all these sattva guna. But that sattva guna, when you have, so you're kind of exploited, you kind of harassed. And then again, since your basic nature is not to do some harm to somebody else, but then you keep on suffering. Okay, so what is your suggestion on that? How do we adjust ourselves with the surrounding? Because I just happened to read some of the verses from the Chanakya, this thing. So there are some more practical aspects of that. But when we talk about this, then there are different aspects. So just wanted your inputs on that. How do we maintain that, true nature of oneself? And again then interacting with people, accepting people, and then still maintaining the true oneself, not lying to anything, कोई धोखा नहीं, कुछ नहीं, जैसे हम हैं हमें वैसे ही करना है. उसमें आपका थोड़ा सा इनपुट.
हाँ, तो मैं सिर्फ माने अपने अनुभव से बता सकती हूँ. आई एम नॉट अराइव्ड और एनीथिंग, बट मैंने अपने आप में देखा कि मेरे में भी तीनों गुण हैं. ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ सत्व है. कभी कभी मेरे में रजस तो बहुत ही ज्यादा है, बिकॉज आई एम कर्म योगी. आई वांट टू गेट अप, आई वांट टू एक्ट. बट तमस भी है, राइट? और अगर मैं अपने आप में, मुझ में मैं देख पा रही हूँ कि तीनों गुण हैं, तो सामने वाले व्यक्ति में भी तीनों गुण हैं. सभी व्यक्तियों में तीनों गुण हैं. ऐसा तो कोई नहीं है कि सिर्फ सत्व है और उसमें रजस तमस बिल्कुल ना हो. सिर्फ वो जो महान पुरुष होते हैं उनका ही ऐसा शायद स्थिति होता होगा. But in my everyday life, if I am authentic and I accept that all these three gunas exist within me, then it becomes much easier to accept it in the other person also. So for me, my sadhana has always been about coming back, and if I'm not able to understand the other person, it's because I cannot understand it within myself. And so my mind and my body are really the field where I will understand not just the other person, but all of nature. And it, like, if forget about human relationships, I am very much of an animal lover. And when you are in front of an animal, there is no pretense possible. आपकी जो अंतर स्थिति है, that animal will immediately reflect it back to you. अगर आप तामसिक हो तो वो उसकी आंखों में दिखाई देगा. अगर आप भयभीत हो और आप में fear है, he will immediately mirror that back to you. So nature becomes like a mirror, and then you realize, अरे मुझ में भय क्यों है? Why am I fearful? Can I calm down right now? and then the animal will also calm down. And so nature starts reflecting what is inside. You will start seeing that on the outside. This has been my personal experience, but beautiful discussions. But with your permission, I'll move on to the work, because maybe that might show you how it's possible to actually bring this into the work we do. Also, I might run out of time, so I'm a little nervous about that. So, okay. So, I've been working on environmental issues since I left the ashram in 2001. So that is 23 years now. I've been in Pune. And when I came here, and I, obviously, in the ashram, my interactions with nature were much more about the beauty of nature and the mystery of nature. And then when I came out into the city, it was all about, oh my God, what a mess we've created, right? So one of the things I started working on was Indian festivals, because I saw that there was an interface between what people believe in and what they are actually doing on the ground. And there I could see that there was some kind of disconnect between the two. And one of the festivals I started working on in 2007 was the Ganesh Chaturthi festival, because in Pune, it's a huge festival here, and it's, lakhs of people are out on the street during that festival. And this particular campaign that I'm sharing with you here is called Punaravartan, and I started this 5 years ago. And the idea in this campaign was to look at one ritual, which is the ritual of Visarjan. I think all of you are familiar with Visarjan. And the environmentalists were saying that ये विसर्जन के कारण सब कुछ सारे water resources pollute हो रहे हैं, विसर्जन नहीं होना चाहिए, right? And so I started saying that, I started asking people कि आप विसर्जन क्यों करते हैं? So I realized कि very few people know. Answer was always किया जाता है, हम करते हैं, करना पड़ता है. So I said, no, we have to really study this further. And when I started looking at the idea of Visarjan, and just that one word, I mean, the beauty of Sanskrit is आप एक भी अगर शब्द लोगे ना, और उसमें अगर आप बहुत deeply अगर जाओगे, तो it will be like a whole world will open up to you. So when I looked at this word Visarjan or Visarjanam, the root of this word is again Srija, which I had brought to your attention earlier. So Srija is a word that simultaneously connotes kind of a surrender or a giving up or a letting go, as well as creation, So Sanskrit में ये एक शब्द है जिसका अर्थ creation भी होता है और dissolution भी होता है simultaneously. So it's mind-blowing, isn't it, right? And so along with the word Visarjan, you would also often see this other phrase, Kshemaya Punaragamanaya cha. That ये हम क्यों विसर्जन करते हैं? क्योंकि हम जानते हैं कि विसर्जन करने से एक बार फिर सृष्टि शुरू हो जाती है, right? And then this word Sruja is also the root of the word Nisarga, of Srijana and Visarjana. So you start realizing, अरे ये तो बहुत सुंदर कल्पना है. This actually Visarjan is talking about that circularity that is at the foundation of the entire Indian perspective on nature, right? And then you start looking at, okay, then how did it come down to this belief? So शायद आप लोगों में से कुछ ने अस्थि विसर्जन भी किया होगा. And when my mother passed away 2 years ago, she was quite a skeptic. तो उनको ये सब rituals में कोई विश्वास नहीं था. So she had signed up her body for organ donation, and she said, it's the simplest thing to do. And I said, नहीं माँ, मुझे करने दो, मुझे देखना है कि इसमें actually होता क्या है. And that experience that I had of, after the cremation, taking the ashes and then going to a river and just allowing those ashes to flow away from me. That act, the state that it put me in was so powerful, And I realized that this experience of Visarjan, whether it is Visarjan of a murti or whether it is a Visarjan of ashes, that idea that ये वस्तु या ये व्यक्ति हमारे लिए इतना महत्वपूर्ण था, पर अब हम इसको विसर्जन कर रहे हैं. We are allowing this to flow away from us. Yeah, and that form. So गणेश पूजा में या दुर्गा पूजा में हम एक कृति बनाते हैं जो इतनी सुंदर होती है, और हम 10 दिन के लिए पूरे हृदय से उसकी पूजा करते हैं. And then we are saying, अब हम इसको सौंप देते हैं, we are giving it back to the larger universe, and we are allowing that form to dissolve in front of us, right? So we have created an attachment to a murti, and then we are willing to let that attachment go. So you start realizing, oh my gosh, this entire society at a cultural level is collectively celebrating this idea of letting go. What a fantastic kind of concept that a society or a culture might have developed, right? And so then you realize, अच्छा इसलिए हम विसर्जन कर रहे हैं. So we started speaking to people about it, and we started saying, आपको पता है विसर्जन का अर्थ क्या होता है? And you start restoring that kind of understanding and respecting the tradition itself. However, on the other hand, you start seeing the impact that this Visarjan is having. So this video, I'm hoping you can see this video, is from Chennai. And these murtis that are really huge, made of all kinds of, toxic chemical paints and, are being put into the ocean, right? And this image also shows you the scale at which this is happening, right? And then you start asking yourself, is this what it was all meant to be? On the one hand, it's such a beautiful ritual and it's so meaningful and so important that we should learn how to let go. But on the other hand, we have forgotten that nature herself is sacred, right? And so we are insisting on doing this ritual, and we are completely oblivious of the fact that, हमारे इस ritual से दूसरे प्राणियों पर क्या हानि हो रही है. And this festival in 2015, the Times of India said that it generated 20,000 crores of rupees. This one festival, and that it was growing at the rate of 30% every year, right? So you start wondering, what is this about? And then you look at what are the materials being used? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? How did the ritual change? What was it originally meant to be? So I started speaking to some Vedic scholars around here, and they said that shayad, it was an agrarian community, and earlier it was really, perhaps it was the worship of the soil. वो nadi ki mitti, which was very important mitti for them, because they knew that their life depended on that mitti. They would bring that home, they would do puja to it, and then after a few days they would return that soil to where it came from. So that could have been one possible explanation of where this ritual started, and then when you start replacing those materials, so you start realizing, acha, it's the material that is the problem. It's not the ritual that's the problem, it's the material that's the problem. And you have materials like clay. So this is an image of clay versus materials like plaster of Paris, which do not dissolve, they're not biodegradable. And then, of course, if you put chemical paints on this, it makes it even worse. And then this is the kind of result that you see. And I'm sure many of you have seen this, very heart-wrenching, footage of something that is so dear to us. Just one day earlier, our whole attention was on beautifying and glorifying this murti, and then one day later, we just don't care. So obviously, there's something wrong, something that is disconnecting. So we started working on this, and we started wondering, how do we, change what is going on. Now, the Central Pollution Control Board had broad guidelines and had started talking to people about not using chemical paints, not using plaster of Paris, not doing immersion in rivers and lakes. But they are finding it very difficult to implement this because there's a lot of resistance. So we also did a survey and we asked people, कि आपको क्या लगता है कि आपके इस गणेश उत्सव से निसर्ग को हानि होती है या नहीं? So you will see that, and this was, so we've been doing everything very systematically. It's not something that I just imagine. We have done surveys, we've collected data, and then we've come to understand what people's mindset is. And so in this slide, you will see that although 61% are saying, yes, there is an ecological impact, still 40% of people are not sure about it. And some of them are even saying, no, there's no ecological impact. And then when we ask them, कि आप विसर्जन कहाँ करते हैं? So do you do it at home or do you? And this is in Pune. So Pune is already very aware. There's a very high rate of environmental awareness in Pune. But even here, about 43% were doing the Visarjan at home, and then everybody else wanted to do it out in nature. And if we ask them, do you know what happens to your idol after the Visarjan? Most people don't know. So, and then they don't care, or they don't take the time to find out कि हमारी मूर्ति का होता क्या है, right? और उससे उसका प्रभाव क्या पड़ता है नेचर पे, कोई जानता नहीं. So what do you do? So there are emerging alternatives, and once you have recognized that it's not the ritual that is the problem, it's the fact that people have forgotten why they are doing the ritual, also that they are using the wrong materials, they're using the wrong artifacts, and perhaps is it possible to change the ritual script, which is the way in which the ritual is actually enacted? Where can you bring the change in? And this is where we got in this idea of punaravartan. So punaravartan shabd humko Bhagavad Gita se mila tha. There is one particular shloka where Shri Krishna is reminding Arjuna that in nature all things undergo growth, dissolution, and renewal. So it's a reminder of the cyclic and circular processes in nature. And we also brought in science, and we started talking to people कि आप अगर तरह तरह के materials आप use कर सकते हैं, तो हर material को समझने की जरूरत है, और हर मटेरियल का क्या प्रभाव पड़ता है वो भी आपको समझने की जरूरत है, और ये जानना है कि कोई भी ऐसा मटेरियल नहीं है कि जो 100% ठीक है, बिकॉज अभी हमारी आबादी इतनी बढ़ गई है, our population is so big and the scale at which we are celebrating this festival is so huge that even if we all use just cow dung and you went and put 100 tons of cow dung into the river, it's not going to be able to sustain, the ecosystem will not be able to sustain it. So what should you do? Right? So in Punaravartan, what we are telling people is that आप घर पे विसर्जन कीजिए, स्वच्छ पानी में विसर्जन कीजिए, और आप कोई भी नेचुरल मटेरियल्स यूज कीजिए, और फिर विसर्जन के बाद वो मिट्टी आप हमको वापस लाके दीजिए, और फिर हम वो मूर्तिकारों को वापस करेंगे, एंड देन दैट्स हाउ it will not go into any natural resource. You will get the benefit of the Visarjan and the experience of the Visarjan. However, we will also conserve those resources and make sure that they get reused again. Now, here I want to bring in a very important point, which is that, I realized as we were going along that Punaravartan is not a waste management project, because the materials we are handling are not waste. These materials, पूजा के बाद की सामग्री को अभी भी हम सम्मान देते हैं, वो कचरा नहीं है, right? And even the idea of letting go is not the same thing as throwing something out. India has never been a use and throw culture. This has come to us from West, right? This idea of disposability. अगर हम disposable चीजें बनाते थे तो वो नैसर्गिक चीजों से बनाते थे. So we had banana leaves, we had kulhards made out of mitti only. It was not that you used plastic and then you disposed it after one use. This is a very Western concept that has come in, right? So understanding the difference between, and in Marathi वो जो शब्द है निर्माल्य, so निर्माल्य का मतलब यही होता है कि जो मल नहीं है. So you start realizing that if you really value every material in nature, there will be no waste. Nature doesn't create waste. We are creating waste because we don't value those materials. And here I'm just sharing that we started working on the flowers, which came out of the festival in 2009. And we started, this is an image from the prison, because we were working in the prison for 5 years. And we would take all the flowers from the entire Ganesh Utsav in Pune, and the whole prison would be filled with these flowers. And we taught the women how to convert these flowers into various products. And this slowly, this campaign really became like integrated into the Ganesh Utsav in Pune itself. And these are news clippings from 2010. You can see on the left, when we had first introduced this campaign, we had collected around 5 tons. And last year, Swachh Cooperative, to whom we handed over the project, and their waste pickers, they collected 150 tons of these flowers. And so the success that we had in changing people's mindsets about Nirmalya, we are also now bringing to another material in the festival, which is clay, and telling people that it's so easy to reuse this clay, and how you need to do it is, all that you need to do is you need to collect the clay. So आप अगर एक कपड़े में वो clay अगर collect करके एक पोटली बना के हमको अगर लाके देंगे, तो ये clay फिर हम मूर्तिकारों को वापस कर सकते हैं, और ये क्ले इतना आसानी से रिसाइकिल हो सकता है. तो इस तरह से हमने कलेक्शन शुरू किया, लोगों के घर से मिट्टी आने लगी, न केवल घरों से, बट हमने गवर्नमेंट को भी इसमें इन्वॉल्व किया. और जो गवर्नमेंट के इमर्शन टैंक्स होते हैं वहां की मिट्टी भी हमने कलेक्ट करना शुरू करी। और मुझे बहुत खुशी होती है कि इस वर्ष अभी अभी हमने गणेश उत्सव संपन्न किया है, तो उसमें हमने 57,000 kgs of clay we were able to collect, and we were able to return it back to the murtikars. And this is a short video clip of one of our murtikars making a murti all over again from this clay. So in this way, we were able to bring that idea of circularity and reinterpret it for contemporary times, and by protecting and maintaining the original intention of the ritual, and yet making sure that we do not pollute our environment in any way. यही क्ले अब हम आर्किटेक्ट्स के पास भी भेज रहे हैं, बिकॉज उसका क्वांटिटी बढ़ता ही जा रहा है। तो जो मूर्तिकार नहीं यूज कर सकते हैं वो सिरेमिक्स में जाएगा या कंस्ट्रक्शन में भी जा सकता है। तो इस तरह से हमने we came back full circle through this idea of punaravartan, and in this way we were able to combine the learnings. And just my last 2 slides, I think I have 3 minutes left for my 1 hour to be over. But the last concluding thoughts that I would like to share. One is that most of our traditions in the Indian knowledge system are based in a very deep understanding of nature, right? Which is what we have lost. We may still continue to do those rituals, but unless we really try to understand why I am doing this ritual, unless it becomes a conscious practice, we will not benefit from it. Now, in this particular ritual of Visarjan, the ritual itself is circular. It's talking about circularity. But if you introduced industrial materials to it, instead of being and becoming circular, it's actually blocking that cycle and it's generating waste. Now, if I go in as an environmentalist and I start pointing fingers and I start saying, ये कैसा तुम्हारा ritual है, सब pollution हो रहा है, बंद कर दो ये सब, I am coming there as an outsider. But if I speak to them as a Hindu, as someone who is trying to understand why am I doing this Visarjan, and if that change is coming from inside our community, then the chances are that it would be a much more lasting and much more sustainable change. These rituals are very important, whether we continue doing the same rituals or whether we reinterpret them or redesign them according to what is more appropriate to our urban lifestyles and our urban context. It is very important to have some rituals in our life so that we take some moments in the day and kind of refresh that personal connection with nature, because that is what is actually energizing us and giving us, the energy to continue. Because as most environmentalists will tell you, it's a thankless job, and at some point or the other you feel like giving up and you say mujhse nahi hoga. But if every day I sit down for meditation 10 minutes in the day and I remind myself that it is actually nature's forces that are working through me, then I can be detached and my actions come from that detachment, and then the right action just happens effortlessly on its own. And so then I won't get burnt out as an environmentalist. And this last slide, mainly because Sushant and I were also talking this morning, कि आपके सबके मन में ये प्रश्न उठेगा कि मैं इतना सारा जो wealth of information and knowledge है, ये मैं अपने जीवन में कैसे उतार सकूं? ये होने ही वाला है, होना ही चाहिए, ये प्रश्न हमने पूछना ही चाहिए। तो मेरे लिए जो चीजें what has worked for me is, firstly I should be willing to question. सब कुछ जो हमको वेस्टर्न साइंस से आता है उसमें हम अगर पूछेंगे भी नहीं कि क्या ये सही है, क्या ये मेरे लिए अप्रोप्रिएट है, क्या मेरे कॉन्टेक्स्ट में अप्रोप्रिएट है, तो प्रश्न पूछना, इट इज लाइक द फाउंडेशन ऑफ इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम्स, द स्पिरिट ऑफ इंक्वायरी व्हिच वी नीड टू ब्रिंग बैक. Ask questions. Nobody is going to come after you if you ask a question, right? Look for simple and doable practices that you can do in your everyday life. Ask for guidance from nature, but from within yourself. If you just calm down, you will know what is the right thing to do. Trust your own intuition, and bring back this cyclic way of thinking in everything. It is really because I was able to, my mother insisted that we should embrace the fact that she was dying. That's why I was able to do Punaravartan. That's why I was able to bring that learning into my work. So we need to integrate, it can't be one thing at home and another thing in the office. You have to be able to integrate the whole thing into your life at every level, right? And in a way, what we are doing now, which is, this is a form of satsang itself. So satsang means the company of truth. So keeping the company of people who are asking the right questions. You may not have all the answers. I definitely don't have all the answers. But, you know, the reason why I am so honored to be invited by Brihat, to be invited, you know, in conferences like this, is because it keeps me questioning and it keeps me looking for that final truth. So with this, I'd like to stop. I know I've kept your 1 hour of time that you had given me. If there are any questions, more than happy to discuss with you for a few minutes.
Thank you so much. It was a very interesting session. I didn't feel like how the 1 hour went, and I just looked at the time. I was like, oh, it's been 1 hour. So yeah, I would like to ask all the participants, if you have any questions, anything you would like to discuss with Miss Manisha, please kindly put it in the chat box or unmute yourself and please ask your questions.
Hello, good morning, ma'am.
Yes.
This is Dr. Richa Shukla
Yes.
from School of Languages, CSJMU. In fact, when you were discussing this ritual of Visarjan, then creating this idol and everything, I had a memory when I was studying T.S. Eliot as a student. I had to study so many things as a student for my Viva and everything in MA. So हम लोगों को लिटरेचर में ये बताया जाता है और पढ़ाया जाता है कि दुनिया में whatever cultures are there is always a big story that is everywhere in the world, in all the cultures. A basic story that goes like that. We cultivate the things, then we use them, then we do this kind of visarjan in all the cultures, I think. I hope you might have studied these things also. So मुझे ऐसा लगता है ये जो हमारा गणपति विसर्जन का कल्चर है ना, ये उसी का पार्ट है जो हम अभी तक पकड़े हुए हैं और दुनिया के बहुत सारे कल्चर्स ने छोड़ दिया है. I feel like that. And this Visarjan is not about doing the Visarjan of POP in the river. It should be doing the Visarjan of all these eatables like food grains, barley and all in the river so that उसके बीज दूर दूर तक जाएं और हर जगह cultivate हो सके. I feel like that. So what do you say about that?
That's a very interesting thought. See, ये जो ह्यूमन विजडम है ना, वो कोई भी एक कल्चर की मोनोपोली नहीं. ठीक है, ऐसा तो नहीं है कि सिर्फ इंडियंस ही सब कुछ जानते हैं और बाकी कल्चर्स में नहीं जानते, राइट? मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि मोस्ट, और आप अगर इंडिजिनस कम्युनिटीज में जाएंगे, जो इंडिजिनस हमारे आदिवासी कम्युनिटीज हैं, तो वो लोग तो बिल्कुल निसर्ग के बहुत पास रहते हैं, राइट? तो उनका भी अंडरस्टैंडिंग बहुत डीप है नेचर को लेकर. मैंने आपको पहले से ही कहा कि मैंने जो प्रेजेंट किया है वो थोड़ा एक ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट जैसा किया है कि वेस्टर्न वर्सेस इंडियन, बट इट्स नॉट नेसेसरी लाइक दैट. और जिस आप जो कह रहे हैं ना कि many of these wisdom traditions existed in other parts of the world also. I completely agree with you. I have not spent that much time studying Greek culture or others, but again, being humble and accepting that अगर हमको रियलाइजेशन हो सकता है तो बाकी लोगों को भी रियलाइजेशन हो सकता है, फॉर श्योर.
यस मैम. इनफैक्ट जैसे गणेश विसर्जन साउथ में होता है, महाराष्ट्र वगैरह में, सिमिलरली हमारे यहाँ पालथी पूजन होता है. बेसिकली इट इज नोन एज पार्थिव पूजन, जो सावन के टाइम पे हम लोग यहाँ होता है पर्टिकुलर डेज में, जिसमें हम शंकर जी की मूर्तियां बनाते हैं. गणेश, शंकर, पार्वती एंड कार्तिक एंड एवरीबॉडी, द होल फैमिली ऑफ शंकर जी. और उसमें अभी भी आज भी रिचुअल है कि वो पीली मिट्टी से ही बनेगा. सो आई थिंक अगर हम उस तरह का कुछ एक्सेप्ट कर लें कि नहीं, हमें पीली मिट्टी या कोई चीज ही लेकर करना है, तो एनवायरनमेंट के लिए भी जो हमारे रिचुअल्स हैं, दे आर नॉट एनवायरनमेंट अगेंस्ट, दे आर एनवायरनमेंट फ्रेंडली बेसिकली. क्योंकि हम मिट्टी के टच में आ जाते हैं, फिर विसर्जन करते हैं, देन वी गेट सम काइंड ऑफ, यू कैन से, एकाग्रता भी मिलती है दिमाग को थोड़ा सा. सो आई थिंक कि अगर हम इसको फॉलो करते हैं और स्पेशली अपने बच्चों को बताते हैं, जो मेन इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग है, क्योंकि हम तो सेमिनार और कॉन्फ्रेंस और इसके थ्रू बहुत सारा ज्ञान ले रहे हैं, पर बच्चों को देना बड़ा मुश्किल है. बच्चे तो वही कल्चर में है ना, पॉप कल्चर में, कि अरे गणेश जी की विसर्जन होगा या कुछ होगा तो उसमें डीजे बजेगा. That's the part that I am not able to come to terms to.
हाँ, तो रीचा, आपने सही प्रश्न पूछा है. हमारे परिवार में क्या हुआ था कि मेरे पिताजी, जब मैं 2 साल की थी, तब उनको बहुत इच्छा थी कि मेरे गुरु होने चाहिए. ठीक है, तो वो गुरु ढूंढने निकले थे. और ऐसा हुआ कि जब मैं 2 वर्ष की थी तब उनको अपने गुरु से फाइनली मुलाकात हो गई। तो मेरा परिचय मेरे गुरु से 2 वर्ष की उम्र में ही हो चुका था, और मुझे जो शक्तिपात की दीक्षा मिली थी वो मैं 6 साल की उम्र में मुझे मिली। और फिर 11 साल की उम्र में पिताजी ने कहा कि अब हम कुछ रिचुअल्स हम करने वाले हैं घर में। और तब बच्चों को करना नहीं था, राइट? थ्रू आउट योर टीनेजर्स यू से ये क्या है, आई वुड रादर गो आउट एंड प्ले। लेकिन उन्होंने जो थोड़ा सा इंसिस्टेंस किया था कि हम सुबह में 5 बजे उठेंगे और गुरु गीता का पाठ करेंगे, और वो जो उन्होंने किया तब, राइट, बहुत साल के बाद मुझे उसका महत्व समझ में आया, और मैंने उनको दिल से धन्यवाद किया कि थैंक गॉड कि आपने हमको ये सिखाया, राइट? तो फॉर इसी एजुकेशन रिक्वायर्स रोल मॉडल्स। हमारा जो गुरुकुल सिस्टम था, तो द गुरु वाज अ रोल मॉडल। मेरे गुरु के साथ संबंध था, तो उसमें प्रश्नोत्तरी ज्यादा नहीं होती थी, उनके सानिध्य में ही हमको बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिलता था। तो ऐसे रोल मॉडल्स कहाँ हैं? तो आप अपने बच्चों के लिए रोल मॉडल बन सकते हैं क्या? भले उनको अब समझ में नहीं आए, बट शायद 20-25 साल के बाद में वो सोचेंगे कि हाँ, माँ ये रोज करती थी, वो क्यों करती थी, और वो करने से शायद 25 साल के बाद जब उनका समय आएगा तब वो डिस्कवर करेंगे कि हाँ, जैसे अब हम अपने पूर्वजों का डिस्कवरी अब कर रहे हैं, बराबर। तो उसका उसका परिणाम तो होता ही है, अपने समय में होता है। सब लोग अब जब परिपक्व होते हैं तभी उनको वो परिणाम मिलता है। बट वी हैव टू, आई फील लाइक आई हैव टू बिकम अ रोल मॉडल, एंड आई कैन नॉट बी अ रोल मॉडल इफ आई एम नॉट डूइंग द प्रैक्टिसेस माई सेल्फ, राइट? एंड दे कैन बी सिंपल प्रैक्टिसेस। आपको हिमालय में जाके संन्यास लेने की जरूरत नहीं है। आपके दैनिक जीवन में ही छोटी छोटी चीजें आप कर सकते हैं कि जिसके करने से आपकी जो अंतर स्थिति है वो दृढ़ होती जाएगी, और आपके बच्चों पर उसका प्रभाव होने ही वाला है। they cannot escape from that. They will immediately sense it. So it's a very natural thing.
Yes, even I agree with that. That's the real thing that we are supposed to do, in fact.
Yes.
क्योंकि हम अपनी लाइफ में हमेशा देखते रहे हैं ना हमारे पेरेंट्स को कि कोई त्योहार आया है तो हमें उसको इको फ्रेंडली वे में कैसे मनाना है। पटाखे नहीं चलाने चाहिए, ये अभी लोग बता रहे हैं। और हमारे घर में हम लोग छोटे थे तो मेरे फादर हमेशा उसको, कभी भी पटाखे जब आते थे तो वो पहले ये बताते थे इसमें ये केमिकल्स हैं, इसका ये साइड इफेक्ट होगा। नाउ यू थिंक कि आपको कितने यूज करने हैं। सो वी यूज टू मेक अ बजट कि ठीक है हम 50 रुपीज के ही जलाएंगे। उस समय 50 रुपीज वॉज अ बिग थिंग, इतना कम नहीं होता था आज के 30 साल पहले। तो हम लोग उसका बजट बनाते थे खुद से कि हम इतना ज्यादा नहीं करेंगे कि धुआं बहुत ज्यादा हो जाए। सिमिलरली वी कैन एजुकेट, आई
आप
थिंक।
अगर एक बात भी देखेंगे ना कि अगर आजकल अभी एनवायरमेंटलिस्ट आर वेरी वरिड अबाउट कंज्यूमरिज्म, राइट, एंड मटेरियलिज्म,
करेक्ट।
तो नाउ दे आर टॉकिंग अबाउट सिंप्लिसिटी। जिस तरह से भारतीय संस्कृति में सिंप्लिसिटी इज सो डीपली इंटीग्रेटेड दैट हमारे आई फील दैट मेरे जीवन में कोई मुझे कभी पूछता नहीं है कि तुमने कौन से ब्रांड के चप्पल पहने, या तुम्हारे कानों में
Nobody asks, even in anybody's life, I don't think.
Right. So being simple is environmentally sustainable, and being simple is very much part of our.
Hi, can I ask a small question?
If he is in that role, है ना? So there are so many concepts of daily life that if we are being authentic and we are being true to our Indian culture, उसी में we are being environmentally friendly, right? And we don't need to fall into this trap के दिवाली में आपको इतनी चीजें खरीदनी है, इतना सोना खरीदना ही है. These things are not necessary. You come back to the origin, and you can only come back to the origin if you are asking the right questions. And here for me the question was I had to ask people कि आप विसर्जन क्यों कर रहे हैं, मुझे समझाइए आप क्यों कर रहे हैं. आप पूछोगे तब पता चलेगा ना. So questioning is very important. Yeah.
Thank you so much,
ma'am. We can stop here now, Sushant.
There is one more question. Brishti Mitra want to ask a question.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I just wanted to ask another question. Is that it was first and foremost, let me congratulate. It was a fantastic talk. Lovely on a Sunday morning listening to this.
Thank you.
Question is, I come from Bengal actually, where this Visarjan part is a very big ritual of our Durga Puja. Yes. Have you been able to, whatever this scheme that you have about recycling, etc., has it just stayed in Pune or have you moved out of Pune?
No, so I'm very happy to say that this year we presented it to the Chief Minister of Maharashtra,
Mhm.
and who endorsed it, and a letter of instruction was sent out to 43 municipal corporations. We also held several training programs online for these gram panchayats and municipal corporations. So we are hoping that in a year or two, the entire state of Maharashtra will be implementing Punaravartan during Ganesh Utsav.
Mhm.
And so from there, obviously the next step would be to take it to a
The
national
other
level.
states.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we already have Bangalore and some cities like Bangalore, Ahmedabad, Hyderabad. What we really require is to find the right partners on the ground in each of these
Correct.
cities,
Correct.
and to convince the state government that this is something important. That so obviously there was one slide of a Durga deity in my presentation. So Durga Puja. See, actually the good thing is that the Bengalis continue to use natural materials. So
Yes, yes,
I
that
have
is correct.
seen, so even those very large Durga deities are actually made using straw
Yes.
and cloth and clay, and their
It's
clay
just
is
the
very simple.
volume of the amount
Yeah,
material
the
that
volume
becomes.
is exactly.
Mm.
So definitely it's on the cards. It's going to take us time, but yes, we would love that the whole country finally implements Punaravar.
In fact, we were having just a Diwali Mela out here in Kanpur yesterday, and I
Hmm.
saw they made these beautiful Ganesh Lakshmi with Panchagavya.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying it as part of the recycling and a safer, cleaner Diwali for
Yes,
everybody.
yes.
Thank you very much.
Sure,
Wonderful.
sure. You're
हेलो
welcome.
मनीषा मैम,
Yes, yes.
तुम्ही कसा आहे?
आम्ही ठीक आहे. तुम्ही कसे आहात?
आम्ही चांगले आहे.
बोला.
I'm Dr. Suman Devi. I'm assistant professor in commerce.
Yes.
So while listening to you, I'm from commerce background, na? So
Okay.
my brain is always work in profit and loss statement.
Yes, yes.
So I just generated a new idea to how
Uh-huh.
to recycle the old clothes
Mhm.
because Diwali is on our head, and
Yes.
in every house there are always some clothes which are not needed,
Yes.
right? But what we do, we just pack them up and put somewhere. When next Diwali is come, then we again bring them back, wash them, and put them
Put
back.
them back.
Right?
Yes.
But I have an idea because you are on such a platform where you can convert this idea into big thing.
Okay.
So, like if we charge 50 rupees per house, and on the nearby Diwali, we went to houses, जो हम लोग जाएं और उनको बोलें कि आपका जो भी ओल्ड क्लोथ है, बिकॉज क्या होता है ना, हम लोग जैसे बीच में कभी आता है कोई मांगने वाला, तो उस समय वो सब एक जगह पे नहीं होता है, तो कई बार हम लोग ऑन स्पॉट जो मिलता है वही डोनेट कर देते हैं या दे देते हैं, पर अधिकतर लोग वो मतलब एफर्ट नहीं डाल पाते हैं कि हाँ ये कलेक्ट हो गया तो अब इसको हम दे आए, किसी को डोनेट कर दें या कहीं पे कर दें। तो उसके लिए एक छोटा सा ये हो सकता है कि उनके घर से 50 रुपीज चार्ज करके ऑन डोर स्टेप उसको पिक कर लिया जाए। और बिकॉज होता है कि उसकी दरी बहुत अच्छी बनती है, जो ओल्ड क्लोथ्स रहते हैं, बिकॉज वो सॉफ्ट हो जाते हैं, उन्हीं को ही दिवाली पे वो वापस गिफ्ट भी कर दिया जाए। तो इससे क्योंकि क्लोथ्स बहुत ज्यादा होंगे, 50 रुपीज इज वेरी मिनिमम चार्जेस, तो
बिल्कुल
उसको
बिल्कुल। तो इस तरह का काम ऑलरेडी हो रहा है सुमन जी।
यस
यहाँ पे पूना में, अगर कभी आप पूना आते हैं ना, पूना
यस
में
मैम, आई स्पेंड 1 year in तुलजापुर, दैट इज व्हाई आई
अच्छा,
नो मराठी
ओके
एंड
ओके
कल्चर
ओके।
ऑफ महाराष्ट्र वेरी वेल।
But so these kind of green enterprises na, which are taking waste and recycling them, there are many in Pune. So there are groups that are taking old clothes to make godadis out of it. We have several private companies that are collecting e-waste. We also have one of the founder of an industry which takes food waste and makes fuel out of it. And now they are coming up with a prototype of public transport that runs on that biogas. So there's some amazing things going on,
It's
and
nice to hear,
and
ma'am.
even as a commerce, see, even as a commerce professor, you actually, there's a very critical element, which is this idea of profit, and
Yes,
making something financially viable. So luckily, when I first started working, I realized that I need to understand commerce also. So I run 2 organizations. One is a commercial enterprise, which is called Ecoexist Enterprises. And the other one is Ecoexist Foundation, where I do research and I do campaigning. But if you do not integrate, so there is an entire field of economics called environmental economics. which is talking about the financial impacts of environment degradation, and where this idea of circular economy. So you have brought in a very important point, because circularity is not just some abstract, esoteric, intellectual concept. But when you look at circular economy, and you can maybe Google this. So circular economy में you start valuing, जैसा कि मैं कह रही थी कि कोई चीज वेस्ट नहीं है. अगर आप जानते हो कि इसका ये वैल्यू है तो उसको आप फेंक नहीं दोगे. You will find a way of bringing it back into the loop. So that whole circular economy is talking about giving financial value, giving commercial value to things that people were considering waste. है ना? तो आप जैसे कह रहे हो कि भले वो पुराने कपड़े हैं, बट उसका अगर आप नया प्रोडक्ट बनाओगे तो you can put it back into that supply chain loop.
हाँ, yes ma'am.
बिल्कुल.
Manisha ji, there is one more question in the chat box if you may have a look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Suman Biswas. That's the one? Yeah.
Yes.
I think motor vehicles keep on polluting the environment throughout the year, and also the mobiles are equally culpable, but always the firecrackers occasionally used are blamed. Why? So I agree with you. There are so many causes of pollution, right? And I don't think that one is denying कि ये नहीं है और वो है. Nobody is saying that those things are not polluting. My particular field of interest has been to understand belief system. हमारी मान्यताएं क्या हैं, right? So if I am working on festivals, हमने होली के ऊपर काम किया है, दिवाली पे किया है, दशहरा पे किया है, गणेश उत्सव पे किया है, तो that has been my area of work, and my area of study is what is the belief system in somebody's mind. जैसे कि अगर आप even गणेश उत्सव में विसर्जन ले लोगे तो उनकी मान्यता ये है कि ये हमारी मूर्ति पवित्र है, लेकिन ये मान्यता क्यों नहीं है कि नदी भी पवित्र है? ऐसे कैसे हो गया कि पवित्रता सिर्फ मूर्ति में है और अब नदी में नहीं है ना? So my work over the past 23-24 years has been to understand what are people's belief systems that make them act in a certain way, and can we understand those mindsets, and can we change those mindsets. Now if you take industry, right, motor vehicles, it's an industry. The mobile industry is an industry, right? These industrial forces are commercial forces. They are not necessarily linked to any kind of belief system, or perhaps if you really want to extend it, it is the belief that मेरे पास अगर latest mobile होगा तो I will be a happier person. Maybe that's the belief system, right? या मेरे पास अगर बड़ी गाड़ी होगी या fancy गाड़ी होगी, I will be a happier person. So my work has been more around manyataएं and belief systems, and can belief systems be changed or be restored according to our Indian knowledge system, so that they lead to more ecologically appropriate behavior. Now, what is the ecologically appropriate behavior where motor vehicles are concerned? Obviously, that if I use public transport, I'm going to be less polluting than if I use my own car. Or if I'm buying a car, can I use a car that has lower emissions versus a car like a diesel car maybe? So this is the consciousness that you want to bring in as a consumer, because again, my work is more with personal. हर व्यक्ति क्या कर सकता है? So maybe I cannot go out and change the entire motor vehicle industry right now, but as a consumer who has a vehicle, will I make a conscious choice of what vehicle I'm using? Will I minimize the use of a personal vehicle and do more and more of public transport? अब यहाँ पे metro आया है तो हम metro में जा सकते हैं. So in this way, as an individual, what are the choices I can make, right? Now, I am not one to say that, firecrackers are causing all the air pollution. There are so many other causes of air pollution. Even Ganesh Murtis are not the biggest cause of water pollution in the water. I know that. But I also know that through dialogue with these people who are celebrating Ganesh Utsav, if I can get into their minds, or if I can connect with them and explain to them what this is, then what they have understood through this festival, they will also apply to the other aspects of their life. So then they will start thinking about public transport, and then they'll start thinking about firecrackers. An environmentalist's work is a work of a lifetime, Suman. It's not something that you can do overnight. I have already been working on it for 23 years and another 25 years easily before we start seeing change. And, I think what Brihat is trying to do is to say that our civilization as an entirety, we need to go back to our roots. We don't have to take like this Western way of consumerism and badi gadi and bada bangla and or firecrackers and latest mobile phone. We don't need it. We can be happy without it also. मेरे पास टूटा हुआ फोन है इतने सालों का, fine. मैं कहीं कम नहीं हो गई उससे. So coming back to the topic of the conversation today is मान्यताएं. मेरी मान्यताएं क्या हैं और क्या मैं उन मान्यताओं को बदल सकती हूँ जिससे कि निसर्ग से मेरा संबंध बढ़े और निसर्ग का मैं संरक्षण कर सकूं. तो यहीं पे अगर I think we can stop now. Sushant, are we okay now to go?
Yeah. I think we still have a few. We can
We
have
have?
one question. Rather, I have a question if you can please.
Sure, Sushant.
A
Go
quick
ahead.
one,
Yeah.
not question.
अब मेरे पास समय है, आप लोगों को अगर बात करना हो, I don't have
No, the next speaker is also aligned and we're starting at 11, so we
Sure,
have
yeah.
quite a few minutes.
Okay. Go ahead.
If Haya is okay, I'll go ahead with that one
Yes,
question.
please, sir. Sure.
Yeah. Your work is an intersection of understanding culture, festivals, regenerative paradigm, and also policy in certain capacities, right?
That's right.
How you work with state and everything.
Yes.
So, how do you see the present Indian state acclimatizing itself to this idea that culture can drive policy, or you have to understand culture in terms of understanding festivities and their implication? Because there is a conversation between the population and the state, right? State here, I mean not like the capital political state. Obviously, state of Maharashtra is doing good by accepting what you are presenting to them, but where does the government or the governance machinery stand in terms of, is it empathetic to all these cultural nuances, or you still see a resistance because the bureaucracy is not aligned many times, or what I understand of them, whatever little study that I have done as a student of governance, they are quite colonial in their whole outstanding. So as a person who also interacts in policy, which I personally know you do a lot, what is your stand on that? Maybe a quick
That's a
answer.
very important question, Sushant.
Yeah.
And what comes to my mind is the meeting that we were invited to, the meeting with the chief minister. It just happened that I was in Bombay and they said that
Yeah, I remember.
tomorrow there's a meeting, why don't you come? So we went, right? Now, this was a meeting, if you were there, your questions would have been answered because this was a meeting called by the chief minister. So Shri Eknath Shinde was there, Ajit Pawar was there, and all the bureaucrats were also there, right? And then they were talking to the Ganesh Mandals, the people who put up all those large, huge, because Bombay is like massive, right? And then there were some environmental lawyers were also there, yeah, and some, I think, a few temple representatives were also there. So it was really, we were witness to this interaction between those who were responsible for governance and those who were representing the culture, So I actually myself have become empathetic towards those who are trying to run this country because they are faced with like a humongous task, right? And the problems on the ground are so huge that I have begun to be more compassionate towards them and the fact that it's such a mess, right? But at this particular meeting, I was seeing that the Ganesh Mandals were having right of way in every issue. They were literally actually bullying the whole conversation. जो भी मांग रहे थे वो उनको दे रहे थे. I mean, it came to the point where one of the mandals said, "Sir, हमारी मूर्ति इस रास्ते से जाती है और उस रास्ते पे मेट्रो का पिलर खड़ा हो रहा है, तो वो हमारे बीच में आ रहा है." And I was absolutely stunned, and I was like, "Are you going to say that the metro should not be put over there because you want to take your Ganesh Murti from there?" How do you balance these demands? So I found that because the people in power, they want to stay in power, right? And they know that the Ganesh Mandals and the temples and all are representing people's power. So it was a completely lopsided conversation where the culture was hijacking the whole conversation. And then at some point, the municipal commissioner of Mumbai stepped in and said, I'd like everybody to remember that the Ganesh Utsav is just a 10-day affair, and that we have an entire city to run over here, and we cannot, put the needs of this festival ahead of the larger needs of this entire city. If something is a fire hazard, it's a fire hazard, So it's a very tricky matter, Sushant, and I don't think it's very, very nuanced. And it's only when you actually participate in such meetings, you realize that, the forces that, sometimes things are just happening so organically. Nobody has even kind of thought the entire thing through, right? The environment department heads were there. The pollution control board was there. They were all sitting next to me only. And then on the other side, all the people's representatives were there. And then the ones who were going to be held responsible were also there. So you start kind of, and the point is that we have to embrace all of it. ये सब हमारे ही देशवासी हैं कि नहीं? ये हमारा ही देश, right? So one has to be also compassionate towards the ones who are trying to run the government. And they are well aware, the people in power are well aware that culture, like, even, I mean, there were some very kind of controversial issues that were being brought out, like, should stores selling meat be allowed to be open during Ganesh Utsav? Now, how are you going to answer that question? It's not a very simple answer.
Yeah.
So all I'm trying to say is that I realized at that meeting that it's such a nuanced conversation with so many forces. And if the direct answer to your question is yes, the people in governance are sensitive to cultural requirements. They are not, and many of these people, they are not like highly educated, English speaking, whatever, Western educated people.
Political representatives are rather they come from ground.
Yeah. And that's why they have been elected, because they are still connected to the people on the ground. They know. And even then I happened to be at there were 200 mandals that were invited to Pune Municipal Corporation had invited them. And, just by grace, I happened to be at that meeting. मुझे पता भी नहीं था, and someone said, जाइए, मैं 2 घंटे में पहुंच गई. I was standing there listening to their conversation. And the Ganesh mandals, I have to say, in Pune are a very evolved lot. They do a lot of social work. And so several of them were standing up and saying, we are being made out to be like the enemy over here. But look at the amount of social work that Pune has done through the Ganesh mandals, because the Ganesh mandals are able to raise a lot of funds for this festival.
True.
And many of them have actually taken on, like some mandals were talking about organ donation, because that's what the cause that they had adopted. So Pune mein tarah ke causes ye Ganesh mandals le rahe hain. So they're an active force of bringing about social change. And the people in governance were very thankful to them and recognized that it was important work that they were doing. So again, I think it brings back us to the point that it's not that the secular aspect is being run by the people in governance and then the Ganesh mandals are. This is coming together. So the sacred and the secular have to come together, as much as in sacred activity, as much as in secular governance related activities. We have to bring those two together. We can't keep on opposing them to each other. So yeah. I think that's what occurs to me as a response.
Thank you for that answer, because many times, as you said, we do become lopsided, and then there is a imbalance where you just say, okay, governance is important, and the brutality of culture also says, no, everything has to be sacrificed on that. Thank you, Manisha ji, for this.
Thank you so much.
Haya, you can conclude, and we have our next speaker also, Praveena ji, joining us. So, yeah.
Great.
Thank you, Manisha ji, for joining us.
I'll stay on.
Thank you so much, Manisha ji.
Praveena also.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Yes, so moving on to our next session. Our second speaker for the day is Ms. Praveena Sridhar. She's a lead policy expert at Rally for Rivers, Isha Foundation, and has several years of rich and diverse experience in water and related sectors. She has been a UNICEF consultant for water and sanitization program and a consultant for other multilateral agencies and non-profit organizations. Ms. Praveena Sridhar is an environmental engineering graduate from Stafford University and brings a 20 years of expertise in public policy, focusing on sustainable drinking water, sanitization, and farmer welfare. She plays a key role in the Conscious Planet Save Soil initiative, a global movement launched by Sadhguru to combat the soil crisis, supported by major international bodies like the UN, IUCN. Save Soil emphasizes scalable soil revitalization through policy advocacy, on ground implementation, and direct support for farmers. The initiative aims to unite government, scientists, farmers, and citizens to restore agricultural soil health worldwide. Thank you for joining us, ma'am. We are looking forward to hear your intellectual viewpoints on important ecological aspects of life. I would like to request you to kindly begin this session.
Thank you, Haya. Thanks, Manisha. You put a little bit of pressure saying that you'll hang on to listen to me. Hi.
Hi.
Meeting you for the first time. So when I got the brief from Dr. Anshul saying that Indian knowledge systems and how do you bring them into mainstream education, I was wondering that as somebody who's a practitioner, we really are not very much, looking at how do we make Indian knowledge systems become part of the mainstream. Rather, our work, our focus as Save Soil Movement is to have farmers' livelihoods improve. And generally, the reason, like if you saw what just Haya described as my background, it's been in water for over 15 years. In the last 10 years, I have been also working on agriculture practices or trying to understand agriculture as a sector. I'm just a student even now, right? And there's a very deep connection between water, agriculture, and there is a very strong nexus between water, agriculture, air, and, as resources, right? And let's replace agriculture with soil, right? That's how all of them are together. When you want to make knowledge systems relevant, like start having these knowledge systems reflect in pedagogy of what's being educated in universities, the first thing I told Sushant was, I don't think I can speak to this session. And then I had a couple of back and forth with my husband. And then I said, why should students only be university students or school students? Farmers are also people who are practicing and need education for whatever they are doing, right? So to make, the reason I went into agriculture is the fact that one deeply cares for the state of our annadatas. And we don't want to be reading news about they committing suicide or they kind of getting onto the streets because they're not able to meet their family's needs. You want them to be well. There was a point in our society, the wealth was measured by, or rather the income of a teacher, a farmer, and a goldsmith used to be at par. As in your grains, your gold, and another commodity, let's say cotton, used to be at par. Now what's happening? A farmer is at the bottom rung of the society because the way we value what comes out of the farm has changed. And why did that change? Because of the farming systems have gone through sea change. Like it used to be predominantly farmers used to produce for themselves to begin with. And then whatever was left over was taken to the city centers to be sold. Whereas now it's produced for others and your system is completely revolving around the unit of economics, that's money right now, not goods. Although money was mode of transaction before, but it was predominantly, these goods and these bartering, and there was equivalence that was set. That equivalence has been eroded by the system of economics that we follow right now. So how do we make farmers' livelihood better in this environment as well? That's the reason I'm part of Save Soil, and projects like these are trying to make farmers' livelihood better, right? That's what is happening. And in this, what's the role of Indian knowledge systems? The role of Indian knowledge systems is more in line with our vision. Like the way we adopt knowledge systems is in line with meeting our goal of making their livelihood better, improving their incomes by 3 to 5 times. This is how we adopt knowledge systems. And how do we do it? We don't do it consciously because we want to bring in knowledge systems. It's because these knowledge systems make sense to improving farmer livelihood. And how does it happen? So the way we have gone about looking at all our earth, soil, all panchabhutas as resources to be exploited, right? Whereas the way we used to look at them as those 5 elements that make us therefore worship worthy, therefore the way we attend to them, the way we kind of use them, adapt them, there was a certain reverence and there was a certain consideration and sensitivity. Because that's out of the norm of thinking, all our modus operandi has been exploitative. How do I use something so that we as species benefit? How do I tap into the water so that I have enough water to do agriculture? I have enough water to take care of my communities. Therefore, the way we have gone about, the technologies that have come about are exploitative in nature. So, but we have come a long way. There is no way we can go back. Then in this context, how do you bring in knowledge systems? The beautiful thing is these knowledge systems are not romantically beautiful. They're extremely efficient and profit making. If you really knew what you were doing and if you knew how to put them to use in a smart manner. When you're smart about these knowledge systems or implementation of these knowledge systems, suddenly you become profitable. Suddenly you become efficient. Suddenly you become climate resilient. So the practices that we adopt are informed by practices that our ancestors did, plus certain amount of modern scientific understanding of why they did what they did, and then further tweaking it to fit today's context. So this is how we have been using the knowledge systems. To give an example, we have always used cow dung and cow urine as the primary source of feeding the soil before or after we grow a crop and harvest it. This is a nutritional cycling mechanism, as in whatever you pull out, you need to put it back. Otherwise, year on year, the nutrition that the soil can provide will reduce. So this is how we used to do in the past. But over a period of time, and I think some of it is also from our ancestral knowledge, we do something called as Jivamritam, as in whatever farmyard manure and urine we used to use, we kind of make a brew out of it, which is far more potent and which requires far little farmyard manure and cow urine for us to be able to meet larger chunks of land. Like with 1 or 2 cows, you can actually take care of 5 acres of land. If you went the farmyard manure route, as in just the cow dung route, you may need far more cows. So this is coming together of Indian knowledge systems with little bit of modern science to see how to improve the efficacy of what we did. Because these knowledge systems existed in the context of certain population density, certain structuring of society. Right now, the society and the structure of the society and the density does not match that context. So we need to adopt it. So we use scientific knowledge to adapt it as well. So this is how we have been going about as a movement in terms of adopting the knowledge systems for farmers to be relevant to them, not just asking them to be the custodians who take care of the land, but actually serving their primary mandate of having the livelihood sustained, having the livelihood cater to their familial needs, and also ensuring that they don't fail because of all the market phenomena, your climatic phenomena, and other things. We do a whole lot of things. We work with farmers from the seed until the time it's sold in the market. And we have hand-holding for farmers through the entire chain, from the time they sow the seed until the time they kind of sell it into the market. There are 3 initiatives that we have under Safe Soil. One is called the Safe Soil Farmer Training, where we train them on regenerative practices. These trainings are some of them are generic, some of them are crop specific. And we have trained over 30,000 farmers with a 30% conversion rate. If anybody is here from agriculture, you know, training and training adoption, 30% is actually above pass mark. It's actually distinction, because behavior change is not easy. The second thing that we do is we work with farmers in integrating indigenous trees that are, suitable to the farmlands as part of their farming, so that it build a certain amount of insurance. When I say insurance, if there were to be a crop failure or a glut in the market of your produce, and therefore you're not able to earn enough, and you need money in that year, you need to send your child to college, you need to marry your daughter off, or there is a family emergency, health emergency, you should be able to have a certain certain stash that's stacked up for you to draw from. And that in the case of when you bring trees into the land, the trees become that stashed up cash that your mother keeps in your dal ka dabba for emergencies. And the third thing that we do is we also have farmer producer companies that we are managing as the facilitating body, the CBBOs. We have over 25 farmer producer companies where we facilitate market access to the produce that comes out of the farmers' lands. So this, whatever I just said in the last few minutes, may look very modern, but it takes into consideration our cultural norms. It takes into consideration the societal context from which the farmers come from. And we are very sensitive to something very simple. If I have to say, if we are putting up trainings, farmer trainings, we take into consideration what are the muhurtam dates when they're going to be busy with family functions, and we avoid them so that they can actually come to the training without having to compromise on their festival days. So I think I will stop here. If there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
If participants have any question, this comes more from the area of practice. Pravina ji has been in field and helping out in actual sense. So any questions regarding that are welcome. I request participants to please go ahead and ask questions. We have ample amount of time for discussion, so please.
Thank you, Praveena ji. Manisha ji, if you want to ask some questions.
Yeah. Thanks, Praveena. So I think my question to you is more of a personal question. What is your personal relationship with soil, and how do you, are there things that you do every day, small rituals, or how what is your personal kind of connect with soil, and then how does that translate into the work you're doing, as an environment?
So, as an environmental professional, I'm not an activist. I don't fight at all. I just work for solutions. I'm sorry, in our country, the word has gotten tainted. So I'm just trying to be a little clear there. With respect to soil, I'll tell you a story. The reason I came in 2015 to Isha's then Project Green Hands movement was that I wanted to buy a piece of land and start farming myself. Yeah. And I wanted to be trained through their trainings and also support them in the process, because it's a voluntary movement anyway, right? With whatever little I can. At that point in time, the person with whom I was my mentor that time, he said that I bless you that you never get a piece of land, you never get to farm anything ever in your life, but you be useful to millions of farmers in the country. So I don't farm. I don't have a piece of farm. I'm more of a translator between what works effectively on the ground to the policymakers. I spend enough time on the ground among farmers during the trainings, or I go become a trainer, get trained myself in certain practices. I learn some of them. I learn them from a point of being able to communicate about it to people who don't understand these things. Like I'm right now in Turkey. Yeah. And I'm among people who are pedologists. Pedologists are people who give their life to just understanding soil, that 30 centimeter to 1 meter depth soil, right? They just look at it, they say, what could be its history? What could be the millions of years, what it formed, and how did it transition, right? And what I find in this conference is very interesting. All of them want to set up certain things, information systems, IT technology, all of the things. But what does this mean to the last mile user, the public policy professional, the farmer? Will they be able to use it to take the right decisions? To be able to see that, I cannot be this close to soil. I have to be a little far away from soil. That's what I do. With respect to personal practices, there is something called as Bhuta Shuddhi that we all get initiated in Isha, in which you kind of, it's a practice of worshipping the 5 elements. So I do that practice every day. And whenever I am in field or even in ashram or even at home, I walk bare feet as much as possible.
Beautiful.
Because that kind of, whenever I have to think, I sit on the ground with my, with your typical Indian sitting down on the floor,
Yes.
right? And even if I sit on chair, it's like folded legs only, because I cannot think with my feet inside a shoe or a socks. I need to be bare feet. There's something very, like as you're asking, I'm just thinking, what do I do? Because it's very intuitive for me. A South Indian sitting on the floor with alti palti, that's me. And I cannot think otherwise. If like, doesn't matter foot cracks, but walking, let's say you see a green patch or a nice cushiony soil, you walk with your bare feet. There's enough science to prove that the earthing that happens sets so many things right for us, hormonal imbalance to your back pains to everything, because it's the biggest electron supplier, Earth, right? So there are enough things. These are the simple things that I do, but I don't farm. I'm being very honest here. And I work, like, I try to stay at a certain distance so that I can communicate between people. I can be the translator who can translate what is a need for a farmer to a policymaker, and what can be the hurdle that the policymaker has to not be able to implement the perfect solution. What can be the mid path? What can be the compromise that works for both, right? Or for that matter, you have certain budget, you don't have endless budgets. And how do you ensure these budgets are put to use in a manner that not everybody's unhappy? It's not everybody's happy. You ensure everybody's not unhappy. So that's because I don't know, like if you have studied something in policy, you will know something called a wicked problem. Wicked problems are problems when you solve for them, you're creating more problems. So you try to reduce the number of problems you create while you solve for problems. That's life, isn't it? We only have 24 hours. You need to give it to your husband, you need to give it to your mother, you need to give it to work. At the same time, not have them really feel like you've neglected them. Like right now, I'm like, I had to go looking for internet so that I can be here talking to you guys. And I think that's what to keep the number of problems less and have solutions that work for everybody.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you, Praveena.
Thank you.
Thank you, Praveena ji, for joining us. I know it has been such a difficult task. Like, it's a difficult point that you are going through, no internet and everything else. Technology has not been our friend in this 70. So I just wanted to ask, like, you're working in different cultures with lands and soils. Is there something common or very different with the way people interact with soil, or is it like capitalist systems that have made everyone have similar relationship with the land and of ownership only, or people have their own cultures? Like, can you see the difference or a similarity of cultural relationship to the soil and the produce?
I can talk from a farmer point of view. Culturally, no, but I would say in terms of tenures, land tenures, if you look at it, we as a country have ownership for land. Farmers own the land. And many countries have ownership, like here in Turkey also they own. Whereas if you go to Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan, it's on lease, 100-day lease from the government. If you don't take care of the land, it can be taken away. So usually land ownership defines your relationship with land. If you own it, it's yours. Therefore, you want to care for it more. This is one particular observation. This is an observation you can get from secondary studies also. But that one observation that's come across very strongly for me across every cultural society is that farmers trust farmers. Doesn't matter where you're from. You only trust anybody else who has skin in the game. Like Nicholas Taleb speaks, like you need to have the skin in the game. He kind of detests consultants, right? He says that you have no skin in the game, you're advising somebody to put their money somewhere. Or you're telling to tell them what they should do with their business. So farmers trust farmers. This is something very important. And everybody thinks farmers need education. No, they know it already. Don't they know that is a foundation based on which you grow things? Like if that foundation is not strong, you're not going to get a good crop, is known to them. but they're pushed to the corner to not really recognize, do something about it because of the existing systems of, as you said, the market mechanisms and the production systems that we have enforced on people, large scale productions of one particular crop, just so that it's easy to, pick it up and, transport, the entire supply chain becomes easy, right? These things have been forced on them. There is no how they were before, right? So they understand the value of soil. They trust farmers only. These are the two things that is true across the world. And if you really want to work with them, it's very important that you acknowledge these two things and start from there. And they trust you if you're there with them in the down times or in the challenging times. If you kind of let them go or not be there for them when they're going through challenges, you can be sure whatever practices you're trying to get them to adopt, they're going to run away from it at 2x speed than the speed at which they went to adopt it. So this has been my observation. Farmers, culturally, I don't know. Yeah, this is very economic and societal, but culturally, no, I don't have much to contribute. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else want to ask some questions? But if you're saying that farmers only trust farmers, then what about the policymakers? Policymakers in every country are the people who are not into farming. Or is it somebody who is who has some stakeholders? They are some kind of stakeholder in farming, and then they become policymakers. Is it like that?
No, farmers don't care about policies. They care about, do I get supported to do what I do in my land? That's all. For them, that Samman Nidhi Yojana is money to them. They will like it, they'll take it. But taking that, what they do with it is something that another farmer will decide. Like they will take all the benefits given to them, but will they adopt the benefits for which they are given to them? It's a last mile connectivity problem. Like, if you really want the behavior to change, these are the aspects. The policymakers usually should learn from where the farmers are. It's policy at a very level, no? Like, you need so much reduction in fertilizer usage. This is one policy statement. How does that translate into farmer behavior? That means, what are the things you need to give the farmer? Okay, he needs to reduce fertilizer. He needs to use more natural things. First of all, you need to have an ecosystem that provides him with alternatives that he can use instead of fertilizers. That's an intervention, programmatic intervention based on a one-line policy. And the next level intervention is having that ecosystem. How does he use it? So you need another software approach of having training ecosystem ready to support him. That's second. And the third is to have hand-holding through and through as he adopts. So for this one line to become a reality, you need to have a number of things happen across different levels of leadership. When I say different levels of leadership, until the farmer, let's say this is a country level policy. Like we had this recent policy where government said, whatever fertilizer budget is allocated to you, if you reduce usage of that budget, we will give you half of whatever you have saved back to you to do certain things. This is a very high level budget from Government of India. Well, how does the state go about reducing the fertilizer usage? You provide farmers with soil health card report saying that आपका इतना लगेगा, आपके जमीन पे इतना नाइट्रोजन है, आपको इतना NPK वाले इस fertilizer में से, you don't need to get so much of ammonia or ammonia based fertilizers because you reduce it to 1 bag instead of 2 bags. ये बोलना पड़ेगा. That means you need the ecosystem of soil health card to be running efficiently and trustably. Second, okay, मैं नाइट्रोजन कम लगाता हूँ, नहीं तो ऑल्टरनेटिव में लगाने के लिए तैयार हूँ, क्या करना चाहिए? You could do cover cropping, leguminous crops in between crops. What leguminous crop I put is decided by my primary crop. If it's wheat or rice or bajra, उसके हिसाब से the leguminous crop will change. Which leguminous crop I put. So that means I need knowledge services. Your KVK should be ready to support this chain, right? And the third thing, kharcha hoga. It's a new crop, right? You need seeds. You need labor because it's again a crop. You may not pick it out as a cover crop. You will leave it in, you'll fold it in so that the nitrogen is integrated into the soil, but you will need labor support. You will need Can you provide that labor support through NREGs? Can you connect the dots? Can you make NREGs available for cover cropping? Can you give farmers access to 2,000 rupees so that he can buy the seeds that he needs? So policy to farmer level, there is a lot of programmatic interventions and convergence needed. Existing programs are there, existing budgets are there, convergence is needed. You need people to be able to want to work together. Like if I say the same thing that, oh, we work in silos, ये घिसी पिटी कहानी है. हर government की कहानी है ये, बस अपना नहीं है. Across the world, it's the same thing. Siloization is the same thing across the world. It's not just a government of India issue or governments within India issue, right? So you need to see where it is, and you need to fill the gaps, and you need actors to fill the gap. These actors can be your fellows that the government picks up. CM fellow, this fellow, that fellow can be brought in to do this convergence, or you can have non-profits, or you can have some contract bodies, or you can get your panchayats, or your ASHA workers, or your Mitan and Didis. So many people, last mile extension workers in the government are a lot. Your Anganwadi, your ASHAs, there are at least like your crop surveying. There are boys carrying apps to collect information on what crop is grown which season. There are the agriculture reports that come from Government of India saying this is the amount of crop you have grown across the country, come from certain data collection that happens. There's so many extension workers. You can use them to bridge the connection. So the point is you need somebody who can connect the dots at different levels and keep the machinery going. So that's how I see policy talking to farmer.
I have a thought also, Praveena. In our country, the farmers are not given the respect that is owed to them, especially urban populations are so disconnected from where their food is coming from. And also urban kids have no idea of the amount of effort that goes into simply growing your banana or growing your pot of rice. So my question is that is the Save the Soil movement sensitizing urban citizens and urban children to the crucial role that a farmer plays in a country or in a civilization, so that they are, that we grow up learning to respect the people who grow our food. What do you think? I mean, are you all doing something, or how do you think that can happen?
So we have thanks for bringing me here, because I was thinking, Meena, I never spoke about what we do globally. The moment when global 2 years ago in 2022, when Sadhguru rode for 30,000 kilometers from Europe until India, right? Through snow and deserts of 50 degrees at the age of 65, literally putting his life at risk at certain points in the journey. He did this precisely for this reason. We need to understand what soil is. It's foundation for everything that's life, that is human life also, including water, air, biodiversity, everything, right? Since then, until now, we have at least 100,000 to 200,000 earth buddies, all young people, young kids in their 20s, late teens, and people from across the world. So many of them riding cycles for 3,000 kilometers, 10,000 kilometers. At least I can count 10, 15 people who have done this kind of going around, building awareness on why soil is important and what's the importance of and what's the importance of the role that farmer plays with respect to soil. And these we call them the earth buddies. And these earth buddies are consistently involved in communicating about the importance of soil. That's their role. And we support them by publishing various stories on different kinds of crops, what it takes to grow, farmer stories, and stories of people, young people involved in farming and making this a much more sustainable system. And I think we have a roaring farmer YouTube channel also in Tamil and Kannada. And we have a lot of local youth from these states. And we have a team of 700 young people, staff and volunteers running around Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, working with farmers. And we have a bunch of 20, 30 people in Gujarat. We call them Bhumitras. Okay. The way these people have turned around farmers is miraculous. Within 6 months to 1 year, people trust these people. these kids, and they listen to them, and they are open to trying some things out, right? So
they
this is how we
also
are building.
they educate the urban people about the farm.
So the marathoners, the moving museum people, the people who communicate with policymakers, the people who build awareness by going to schools, going to colleges, these are all urban youth. So there are a lot, the combination is very interesting. There is rural youth, there is urban youth, and there are people in between also, the peri-urbans also. So everybody is playing a role. And we have a lot of these kids have become soil influencers, going and taking farmer stories, publishing about them, talking about them, the way their generation understands. I feel quite old. I'm 39, but I feel very old when it comes to looking at the content and the way people understand the content and the way they perceive the content. And it's really necessary that we need all these people, youth who are inspired to communicate, because they communicate in the way their age group understands.
Right.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Pravina ji. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
In this context, you were just talking about these earth buddies. They're going around and educating people about the soil, etc. And then the previous one, Manisha ji, we talked about the water. So can they just integrate everything, the importance of soil, water, air, all of it together? Is it there's a possibility, or each one has to be done? Has it to be done separately?
No. We don't talk about earth or soil, soil, water, air separately. It's more like bringing awareness to soil, which is foundational for water, which is foundational for everything that is basic needs for us to just
Linking them all
survive.
together, right?
Yeah. But it's a good point, because we have a lot of people working in our Kaveri calling project, which is pretty much working on the soil, but the end consequences, the river flows.
Right. That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
Another thing I would have wanted to know, what about this usual problem in Delhi and the Haryana zone at this point of time, or the crop burning, etc.? What is your take on this? What is done? What should be done? What should not be done, etc.? The air pollution issues that
Whole
arise.
lot of monetary allocation from the governments, state governments, to stop the stubble burning. But I think it will take a bit more of effort for the stubble burning to stop from the farmers' side. I think they're not convinced yet. I'm not very glued into this matter, but this much I know that it'll need a lot more work for that habit to change, because there are schemes, there are equipments, there are various things that are there for farmers to use to not burn the stubble. But I think they're very different, like their mindset is different, and there needs a lot of convincing done there.
Thank you very much.
I think it's
Thank you.
it's also a zoning and an urban planning issue, right? I mean, with the rampant.
Let's not go there. We as a country, when have we planned?
Yeah.
Our master plans of Bangalore that is 25 years old gets dated the day it's made. That's how slow is our planning mechanism. When you look at the zoning, like it's sometimes funny when you go to countries which have per capita less than you see them far more better planned than us. And you're like, where do I go? You know?
One extension to that, another, the urbanization nightmare. I don't want to go there. There are too many questions on that. But in extension to what Mishri ma'am said, Pravina ji, I wanted to ask that this behavioral thing with farmers, how do you see it different outside India, because you work on a global scale now, and in India, that how much rigidity farmers have, although they do accept things that would benefit them and the soil, and they relationship with soil is very different, right? Here we look at soil as something very different. There is a sacredness involved. But then to why they are pushed into a corner, or why that behavioral patterns emerge where they do things which actually destroy the soil they're working on. So I might be wrong here, you know more in that sense, but your thoughts on that.
No conscious intent to destroy soil. There is a very conscious intent to ensure that I live above the red line. I'm not going into debt and I can take care of my
That is what I
family.
meant. Not like destroy,
They
but
are
to survive.
they are responding to the economic structures that exist. They don't have the power to change the economic structures that exist. So the ones who can do differently, and especially not in our case, like there are farmers, if you look at in America and all, they have 6,000 hectares, 7,000 hectares. And I think a small farmer there holds 1,000 hectares. A small farmer in Spain holds 10 hectares. Where are we? 1 hectare. In Vietnam, it's much lesser than a hectare. So they really are not the people who are doing things with a certain intent. They're just reactive to whatever exists there. So if you change the framework of operation, for them to trust it, it will take time. I don't know if you have seen, were burning things in the streets of Holland, farmers, because the greenhouse gas reduction from certain types of farming, especially livestock farming, had to be come down in a certain year, and therefore so many livestock farms had to be shut down. Of course, they'll come to streets. What alternative are you giving? Without giving alternative, how do we expect them to change behavior?
Yeah, yeah. Or what happened in Sri Lanka also, that disaster, that whole the government
Sri
pushed for it.
Lanka was a major fiasco. It was just the government didn't have enough money to buy fertilizers, and they called it movement towards organic farming. They were bankrupt as a government, and therefore they kind of didn't give fertilizers, and they called it movement towards natural farming. That's not how it happens. It's not on off. It's a curve. It's a like reduction of fertilizer usage is a downward going slope.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not like your bar charts of 0, 1, no. So it can't happen like that. And anybody who knows little bit of how your own body responds knows how things change. Starting from your skincare cream, it takes time. It is not aaj lagaya kal safed ho gaye. I'm sorry.
Thank you for that metaphor.
Yeah.
I think we do have some more questions, Anshu.
Yeah, if anyone wants to ask something, they may. The floor is
I
open
may
for
have to
questions.
drop in a minute though, but I think Anshuji, you have my email address, and
Yeah, sure. I'll
yeah,
mail it to you then.
Anisha, it may be good to catch up sometime offline as well.
Yes, absolutely. Because for Punaravartan, na, because it's all around clay and soil, we had some youths that had come to us about 2, 3 years ago. This year, I actually reached out again, but I'm not able to find the right person to connect with on the Save the Soil. So I'll take your email address from them and then we can talk.
Yeah. And thank you for being so patient with my internet issues and
That's
accommodating me.
actually a pleasure welcoming you here and to listening to you.
Thank you, Pravina ji, for finding time. I know how
Yes.
busy and how occupied you have been. So rather, it's thank you from us. Thank you so much.
So
Thank you.
we'll close the session here. We'll rejoin for valedictory session at 4. This we'll send the link in the group. Thank you all for joining us on a Sunday morning.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, do we have to come in person to collect our certificates?
No. We'll send across.
It will be sent through mail.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll join at 4 for valedictory. Thank you so much.
Thank you.